I am history. I am the 21st century history. I am your Rosa Parks, your Harriet Tubmans. I am that person. Somebody has to say, never, never, ever give up.
All right, we've got some breaking news from South Suburban Dalton, where a judge has sided with opponents of Mayor Tiffany Henyard in an ongoing power struggle. Henyard has tried to work around trustees by appointing her own village manager, attorney, and police chief. The trustees sued. Now a judge has entered an order that clearly states Henyard's picks for those positions are out.
So a state court judge has just slapped down the Superman and said you can't make any more appointments. So, welcome to Dalton, Illinois, home of Super Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Now, Tiffany Henyard is known as the worst mayor in America. Now, to show you how bad it is for Tiffany Henyard, she's making about $300,000 a year and can't pay her rent. She's literally being evicted from her apartment in Dalton.
Battled Dalton, Illinois Mayor Tiffany Henyard and her boyfriend have been served an eviction notice. The property owner saying the two are months behind on their rent.
Mayor Henyard and her boyfriend, Kamal Woods, are together pulling down well over $300,000 from taxpayers, according to public payroll records, but they haven't paid their rent since August. And now their landlord says she's had enough.
Now, we've done many videos documenting this mayor's lunacy, so you can just hit any of these playlists or any of these videos you see on screen and get a full picture. But today I want to talk about the new stuff. What's been going on recently in Dalton? Well, first, Tiffany Henyard is not only mayor of Dalton, but she's the supervisor at Thornton Township. Now, she was appointed to the township position after the former supervisor died, and she took over his salary. His salary is $225,000. Now, the end of that term is up, and Tiffany Henyard needs to run for re-election. Now, when it comes to re-election, Tiffany Henyard wanted to be placed on the Democratic ticket.
What do you do tonight if you don't get the Democratic Party's nomination?
What do you mean? I will be victorious tonight. You will see. My people are here. They're not gonna go nowhere. The show will go on.
So the township held a caucus to determine who was going to be on the Democratic ticket. And Tiffany Henyard lost.
Thornton Township Supervisor Tiffany Henyard may lose her job because of some political maneuvering.
A Democratic caucus last night resulted in someone else being named the party's nominee. Eric is in the newsroom with more. Eric?
Well, good morning. The Democratic Party decided to hold a caucus instead of a primary for Thornton Township Supervisor, the first time in decades. And Henyard and her slate of candidates lost that nomination. She's already saying the process was unfair.
Now, Tiffany Henyard lost to Napoleon Harris. He is a former NFL player and current state senator. Now, as a state senator, Napoleon Harris makes $90,000 a year. But as Thornton Township Supervisor, he could be making up to $200,000 a year, essentially doubling his salary. Now, after losing the caucus to Napoleon Harris, then Henyard sued.
Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who is also Thornton Township Supervisor, is suing both Dalton trustees and the township's Democratic caucus after losing the nomination for her leadership role.
She claims the caucus process was unfair and accuses State Senator Napoleon Harris, the caucus leader, of voter suppression. And Thornton Township Henyard claims Harris and caucus organizers locked out supporters during the December 3rd nomination meeting, forcing many to stand outside in freezing weather. She alleges the process was rigged and says the decision to hold a caucus instead of a primary denied voters their rights.
Now, after filing the lawsuit, Tiffany Henyard had to drop the lawsuit immediately and remove one of the plaintiffs from the lawsuit, and then she filed the lawsuit again.
South Suburban politician Tiffany Henyard's battle to stay on the ballot takes a twist. She's now filed, dropped, and refiled a lawsuit, all in the span of a few days. Henyard is suing Thornton Township Democratic Committeeman Napoleon Harris. She accuses him of illegally preventing her and her supporters from taking part in a slating meeting.
Now, while that's going on and she's trying to save her $200,000 a year job, she had some issues with the village of Dalton. Now, as mayor in the village of Dalton, Tiffany Henyard is allowed to appoint people to certain positions, but the board of trustees must approve those appointments. Now, conversely, if Tiffany Henyard appoints someone to a position and if they're approved by the board of trustees, then if Tiffany Henyard wants to fire that person from the position, she also has to get the board of trustees to sign off on it. Now, in the village of Dalton, there were 3 positions that were vacant that needed board approval. That was the chief of police, the village attorney, and the village administrator, which essentially is the chief operating officer of the village. Now, initially, Tiffany Henyard appointed people to each one of these positions illegally. She appointed Michael A. Smith to be village administrator. She appointed Angela Lockett to be village attorney, and then she appointed Ronnie Burge Sr. to be chief of police. Now, we can start with chief of police first. See, the former police chief was indicted by the feds for like 9 crimes, so he couldn't be a police officer anymore.
Starting off with breaking news here at 6, the acting police chief of Dalton now facing federal charges. A grand jury indicted him on bankruptcy fraud charges today.
He's a close ally of Dalton's embattled Mayor Tiffany Henyard and the second of her top aides to face a federal indictment.
So Tiffany Henyard appointed Ronnie Burge Sr. to replace her indicted police chief.
Ronald Burge Sr. He ran against current Mayor Tiffany Henyard back in 2021 and formerly served as police chief in Dixmoor.
The state then sent a letter letting Tiffany Henyard know that Burgess couldn't serve as her police chief because he wasn't qualified.
More drama in Dalton tonight. The state agency that regulates local law enforcement in Illinois says Mayor Tiffany Henyard's handpicked police chief is not right now legally qualified to run the department. In the letter, the deputy director of the Training and Standards Board tells Henyard that Burge is considered inactive because Dalton has not submitted the proper paperwork on his behalf, and because Burge has not completed a requalification shoot since 2021 when he was with the Dixmoor Police Department. For these reasons, he is currently not authorized to exercise law enforcement authority or to carry a firearm publicly, the letter says. We strongly encourage you to remove him from public service until an appointment is submitted and the board determines if he is eligible for reactivation and a training waiver.
Then Tiffany Henyard appointed a man named Michael A. Smith as village administrator. Remember, the chief operating officer of the village? But this guy has a really checkered past.
Our next appointment will be for village administrator.
Tuesday night, Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard appointed a new top aide to a $100,000 a year job, 34-year-old Michael A. Smith, who's been active in South suburban politics for years.
The reason for Mike is he have a wealth of great information. He's a young person and ex-politician. He knows the laws like the back of his hand.
Perhaps that's because Smith has been in and out of trouble with the law for years.
I'd like to thank the residents as well as the mayor.
Public reporting shows Smith has been charged at least 8 times with crimes ranging from domestic battery to official misconduct. In 2012, Smith, then a young trustee in Dixmoor, resigned after pleading guilty to theft when he allegedly stole gasoline by posing as a police officer. Then in 2018, Smith was working as an assistant dean at Thornton Fractional High School when he was fired for sexual harassment of a female student, grooming a student with lascivious intent, and inappropriate aggressive behavior towards a male student. According to his termination letter, Smith was accused of contacting a 15-year-old female student on Snapchat with inappropriate comments and making her his girlfriend. Then earlier this year, Smith was fired from the Echo School District for falsifying information on your employment application.
Now, Henyard's final appointment was Angela Lockett. So, along with Ronnie Burge Sr., Michael Smith, and Angela Lockett, Tiffany Henyard had made these 3 appointments illegally. The board then shot it down, but then Tiffany Henyard was allowed to make 30-day temporary appointments to these positions.
At last night's village board meeting, Henyard announced a 30-day temporary appointments for police chief, village attorney, special counsel, and executive assistant.
So now that brings us to this lawsuit, which Tiffany Henyard lost in a very dramatic way. Now, the village trustees have gotten a permanent injunction order against Tiffany Henyard, Michael Smith, Angela Lockett, and Ronnie Burge Sr. So first things first, it says Tiffany Henyard is restrained from making any further appointments without the approval of the board. Then the court goes into each individual position that she appointed. Next, the court deals with the village administrator, Michael Smith, and says he's restrained and enjoined from holding himself out as village administrator, in other words, faking it until he makes it, and interfering or exercising any duties of the same unless duly appointed or otherwise authorized by law. So it says Michael Smith can't even pretend to be the village administrator anymore. The court also bars Angela Lockett, who's an attorney, from holding herself out as village attorney. In other words, she's not village attorney and can't tell people she's village attorney. This lawsuit demands it. And the court repeats the same language for Ronnie Byrd Sr. He is not the village police chief and can't conduct any of the duties or even hold himself out as such. Now, the former village administrator, Keith Freeman, who was indicted by the feds and then flipped on Tiffany Henyard, she tried to fire him without village approval.
So, Keith Freeman, I know you're watching. You no longer works for the village of Dalton. Please turn in your keys, turn in all your stuff. HR will reach out to you tomorrow as relates to your fight.
So as you see here, the mayor tried to fire Keith Freeman, but since Keith Freeman had been appointed and approved by the Board of Trustees, the mayor couldn't just fire Keith Freeman without the Board of Trustees approval. So even though she tried to summarily fire him, the court comes back and says, well, you know what? That firing was no good. Here, line 7. Keith Freeman is to remain village administrator until or unless the proper procedure is followed, meaning that the village trustees have to approve his firing. So Keith Freeman is still village administrator. Now the court says at the end, defendant Henyard, Michael Smith, Angela Lockett, Ronnie Byrd Sr. agreed to abide and follow all current village ordinances and village codes until such time as said village ordinances or codes are amended by the Board of Trustees or found to be invalid by a court having jurisdiction over said matter. Now, this permanent injunction is in full effect and is agreed upon by all parties and disposes of this matter in its entirety. So what does this mean? Well, this means at the end of the day, if Tiffany Henyard violates this injunction, she would be held in contempt of court and could be facing some criminal or civil penalties for violating the court order. So the walls seem to be closing in on the super mayor. All of her appointments have been fired by a court order. She's not on the ballot for re-election, so things are just not looking well. Let me know how you feel about this Henyard situation, and because I love these crazy videos, I'm going to leave you with this.
Well, we're moving on.